Yeah, so just thought it'd be really great to hear from you a little bit about Breath by Nathan, and also then what you're going to be bringing to the Yes and Regenerate retreat as well.
Beautiful. So yeah, well, I mean, I started breathwork after discovering a transformational breathwork style technique that kind of left me shaking for about 5 hours after the event. There was people having full body orgasms, crying, laughing, screaming. I curled up in this ball, had a very profound experience, and I was just like, wow, just through breathing, it's having these effects on the room and myself. And I started exploring that, and I previously to that I had some issues with my breathing in my day-to-day life, where I which is very common, where people feel like they can't catch a full breath, like there's a weight on the chest. And it was after working in a high pressure sales role and feeling that pressure and that anxiety, but not knowing what it was, and the way that it manifested in my body was that restriction in my breath. And the way it still manifests in my body is a massive restriction in my breath whenever I'm subconsciously stressed out or anxious about something. So putting the two and two together was like, wow, there's some real opportunity for development and a real need to share this with the world, and seeing the massive benefit in terms of emotional healing and processing trauma and shifting emotional state and clearing this kind of emotional gunk that we're holding in the body. And then I embarked in my training over 3 years with transformational breath, and done a lot of that self-work on myself, clearing a lot of that trauma, clearing a lot of the stuff that I didn't know was there. You know, having experiences where I come around and I'm being held and I'm crying and I'm completely unaware of what's happening, and there's just this deep release that happens, or anger coming out, or repressed rage, and also just having very blissful experiences and feeling lighter and feeling like I'd shifted something within myself on a very deep energetic level. And I've seen this happen time and time again with clients, where people can be having, you know, even depression to the point where they can't leave their room, and then having the most profound breakthrough experience in a breathwork session, visions, having full visualization experiences, and receiving a lot of really deep healing that can stay with them for a long time. So I think it can be somewhat akin to a psychedelic experience, but without the psychedelics, just through the psychedelics of your own breath. And it can be extremely potent in these transformational breathwork sessions. So yeah, I can talk a little bit more about what that kind of entails, if you like, and how that works.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, yeah, it's really, I can relate to what you're speaking about, and particularly from this being a really good tool for like stressful jobs, or just when we get into kind of an ingrained way of being, or an ingrained way of breathing, actually, if we were to get more specific, right, like shallow or not really fully like using that capacity that we have, and it slipping under the radar of our conscious awareness, right? That's where it gets tricky to really know what's actually going on, or tricky to see that there's a problem. We just get so used to a way of breathing that's then it feels normal. And it's only then when we go into a breath journey, or kind of sink out of the mind into those deeper layers and the unconscious way that the energy is trapped, right? And that can be where we let something out that we didn't even realize was there in the first place, and then that brings the clarity and the shift afterwards. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I like that you used the word clarity. It can bring a lot of clarity when you do these sessions, and definitely it's so interesting. Like with the transformational breath, I will look at how somebody's breathing, how their pattern of breath is flowing in their body, and you can see, oh, this person is a super achiever, or this person feels extremely stuck in their life, or this person has extremely low self-worth, or this person has been carrying a lot of grief in the upper chest.
Right. So you can kind of type people, or you can get a lot of information about them from.
You can really see like for instance, if the jaw doesn't open, if the mouth doesn't open properly, they're carrying a lot of anger, repressed anger and tension and control. I'm controlling onto this, I'm not going to let go, or lots of low self-worth. There's no movement often in the lower part of the belly, which is like around the sacral chakra, and it's very tight, and there's a lot of trauma there. And the heart, if we're carrying a lot of grief, or we've been heartbroken, or we've had to close down our heart, then often the breath doesn't move in the chest. If we've had to stop moving towards what we truly desire, but instead having to do what our parents desire or what society expects of us, then our breath will not be flowing in the upper chest, because our true expression of our heart, what our heart truly desires, isn't flowing. The willpower is much stronger, so it'll be much stronger in the middle of the breath, and it'll be much more forceful. And there's so many subtleties. It's such a subtle thing, looking at how fast or slow the breath, how much breath is coming in or coming out, how the flow of the breath is moving, if it's all in one unison, or if it's disjolted. Is there a link between, is there harmony between the heart and the will? And just looking at those kind of things, it's really fascinating. And it kind of blew my mind to see that and to experience that. And then looking at also, as you say, like it's about conscious awareness and habitual breathing. There's two parts. There's like this more expansive transpersonal breath work of like expansive states of consciousness and escaping, raising the nervous system in a way, but in a controlled way that can have these profound expansive states of consciousness. Or we just have this, how we're breathing on a day-to-day basis, and how we habitually breathe moment to moment, and how we can allow that to flow in a way that regulates our nervous system and calms the nervous system, and is akin and harmonious to a peaceful way of being, and an open way of being. So it's really interesting how the breath reflects how we are, and it's like how we breathe is how we live. Like our breath is our life force. Our breath is, arguably you could say spirit. Like the word respiration comes from the Latin word spiritus, which means spirit, which is like the ancients knew that this link between life force and breath. So the way we breathe is how we live, and once we can change our breath, often changes how we live. So it's really interesting. Yeah, the more awareness.
It's really great to it's really great to feel your passion and your your level of knowledge, the depth to which that you've kind of explored this and bringing it as a very powerful healing modality. So it's really awesome to be able to support you and to bring you into the retreat here.
Thank you.
This is our ceremony, right? This is our kind of altered state experience, that it is where a big shift can happen. And we've got Ollie Frost coming in with some movement, and then the ice with yourself having the kind of the breath session in between those two. So it'll kind of be movement and breath, and then we jump into the ice. And so
amazing.
So it seems as if we probably heard what that will be like, but what could people who come to the retreat expect from that breath session as part of that kind of 3-phase altered state experience that will undoubtedly bring stuff up, but that's then what we explore within that retreat container.
Beautiful. So I would say that we're going to charge up. We're going to charge up with some breath. So we're really going to, I would say that we're going to be really exploring a expansive state of sympathetic activation through the breath, similar to like some of the Wim Hof style techniques, where we're really bringing in a lot of breath and activating the nervous system, but doing it in a way where we're also able to down regulate. So through having an intense session of breathing, and then we're going to hold the breath and calm the breath. And what this does is it basically puts your body through a little bit of stress, a little bit of expansive kind of sympathetic activation, fight or flight mode in a way, but then you're dropping into these deep states of parasympathetic relaxation, which builds this amazing resilience in the body and allows for the body to and the mind to kind of calm very quickly. And after we feel in a very relaxed place, like extremely relaxed, where we've put our body through the stress in a controlled way, and then after we've already put our body through so much stress, so the body's relaxed. It's like when we put our body through an intense workout, after the body just wants to relax and be
Right,
stopped.
yeah, so it's that peak, getting to that kind of peak state, and then there's the cooling off phase afterwards, right? And that's where we're expanding beyond our habituated ways of being, or of breathing, or of moving, or of things. So we get to see a different state of consciousness, right? Like, so it's like, this kind of feels like a very kind of simple way of explaining what an altered state is. You know, something comes in to take us away from the like regular way of experiencing, which then obviously will peter off, but then we get an insight or some information of some sort from that experience.
I really like that, and it's so necessary for going into the ice to be in that place, because when we go in, if we're not relaxed, then it's much harder to stay in that place, because the more relaxed we can be, the more calm and still we can be, the more we can slow the breath down to activate the relaxation response, right. The more we can place of incredible stillness in the ice. It feels amazing, that stillness that we can drop in, where there's no mind chatter, and you're just there with the ice and with the breath, and present, you know. So that's what we work towards, is getting into that extremely relaxed place to go into the ice, and then after we can move and charge up again.
Yeah, so Ollie was mentioning that with the ice, something that he's seen and something that a lot of people experience when they do the practice is that you can cross-adapt the stress coping capacity that gets created in that breathing, and then in kind of being able to drop into the ice, and you're like, oh, this is actually okay, right? We find a new edge within ourselves where it's not, oh, I don't have to jump out again. You know, something has shifted in our ability to just be calm and still, even when all the intensity is happening. And that feels true within the ice, but then also when we go back into our lives and our daily lives, that capacity is something that we can take into different contexts, different parts of our life as well, which, you know, for me makes it a really powerful tool and a powerful practice, something that doesn't just have benefit whilst doing it, but also has huge benefits generally in the lives of people who do that kind of practice afterwards as well.
Yeah, we push that comfort zone out a little bit. We expand our own limiting belief that we are not able to be comfortable in the discomfort. Does that make sense? We're not able to manage in the discomfort, but actually once you go through that, you're like, wow, that was fine. It pushes our limiting beliefs away and expands our limiting beliefs, reduces them. So then that expands into the rest of our life, and you know, I think that's powerful to be said for all challenge and all obstacles that we face, that they all are there to really help us to grow into our fullest expansion of ourselves, and to grow into our power if we see them in that way. And it really is about a shift in how we actually perceive the challenges, or perceive the obstacles, or perceive the ice. It's like, is it there to teach us and help us grow, or is it there to ruin us? So I think, yeah, it's a very beautiful practice and a very tangible way to directly shift those limiting beliefs.
Amazing. Yeah, wow. Yeah, even just talking about it now, there's a lot of excitement for having it as part of the retreat, and then just what it can open up for us to explore and support anyone who's kind of come along and be part of it, to really integrate that experience into life, right? Like, to go and have that. That's the same with any ceremonial or kind of ritual or altered state experience, is to have it, but then rather than it being like this anomalous thing, it becomes a new part of who we are. It's a capacity that remains accessible, whether that's like an expanded perspective or a greater ability to remain calm and away from those kind of peak levels of stress hormones. So yeah, really practical tool, but really beautiful experience. I'm really, really grateful to have you along for that, brother. So thanks for jumping on and for sharing, and yeah, I look forward to having you for the retreat in February.
I'd also like to offer for any of the attendees for me to do a breathing analysis with them. So just like I mentioned before about looking at how people breathe and offering recommendations and looking at how that might be like interfering with their life in some way. I'm really happy for that. It's like an additional thing for people who are interested as to how their breath reflects their life and how we can shift subtle things in the breath.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. Thanks. We'll definitely share that as well. That feels like a really special and unique thing to experience, to have that knowledge for ourselves as well, and how that can support us moving forward. Yeah.